Hi, everyone. Bridget Zechnick here from SixDegrees.org. Normally, I spend my time as the Director of Programs and Development, but today I have the distinct honor of introducing you to one of our new friends, Rachel A. Dawson, aka Rad of All the Rad Reads. We first met Rachel as a volunteer, actually at one of our Building Kits activations here on the East Coast, and we quickly learned about her incredible presence on Book Talk. So let's take a quick look. So, Rad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is so fun.
Can you tell folks a little bit about you?
Yeah. So, like you said, my name is Rachel. My initials are Rad, which has kind of just given me this built-in brand from my earliest days. I spend my days as a social media manager at a university, which is really fun. Get to work in the higher ed space. And social media just kind of has become my full-time job, is kind of everything that I do. I obviously love to read, and way back in 2017, I started a separate Instagram account to share a little bit more about the books that I was reading, not really trying to kind of make it a thing. Social media was very different back then. I just thought it'd be fun to kind of have a space where I talked more about books, and it has since kind of exploded. It's been a really cool community. I started a TikTok back in 2020 that has blown up to a couple 100,000 followers. And I've just kind of found this space where I get to talk about books and reading and journaling and mental health and causes that I care about, and kind of this intersection of all of my interests, and find people that really resonate with that. So it's really fun to kind of do social media officially at a university by day, and then come home and keep doing it for myself. I obviously love to read, love to create, love to craft, and kind of have just found my little niche in that area.
You've created a safe space on the internet, which is really quite a feat. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun. I've met some of my best friends on the internet, and obviously connected with thousands of other people. And it's fun to go to the local bookstore here in Richmond and have somebody come up to me and be like, "Oh, I follow you." I'm like, "What? I'm just a normal person. How do you what's happening?" But it's really cool.
Influencers in the wild, right? Is what they say.
So weird. Yeah. So funny.
But it's so clear that you have a passion, right, for reading, for literacy, and really the transformative power of books. And I should say that I am the lucky one that gets to do this conversation with you, because I am a huge reader, and my friends and I have a book club, and we love to talk books, and everybody's always like, "What are you using your library card on this month?" and all of those kinds of things. But it's one of the things that really drew us to you, and one of the things we were so excited about. So we are really honored to be partnering on a new initiative called Beyond Our Shelves. And it's going to encourage folks to do lots of different kinds of things through reading, through literacy activities, and really help to empower and inspire folks to be thoughtful about the books that they select, the authors that they support, and all kinds of just fun, unique ways to find pathways into reading. So we are so excited to be kicking that off with you. But I do have some questions. I want to let folks learn about you. We've gotten the opportunity to learn about you, and so we're really excited. But why do you love books so much? Have you always been a reader?
I have. It's kind of a fun little fact in my family. I learned how to read when I was 2 years old. I super early was just putting things together. And my family obviously also are readers. My mom read to me a ton. My dad read to me a ton. They both still love reading. My mom was always in the education space. I think just kind of really fostered that in me from a really early age. And I started reading really early and never really stopped. I was the classic gifted kid in school, just always voraciously reading and writing and creating stories, and loving to illustrate and write my own kind of little stories. I would create these families and then write stories about them, and was just reading everything I could get my hands on. And that's just kind of grown over time. I took a little break, high school and college. I kind of read mostly for school and didn't really find it as fun to read on the side. But I've rediscovered my love for reading since I graduated back in 2013. And I read more now than ever.
What do you like to read?
Kind of a mix of everything. My genres have fluctuated over time. I feel since the last few years have been a little bit heavier in the world, I feel I've read things a little bit on the lighter side, just to kind of balance things out and give myself a little bit more of an escape, and kind of discovered how much I really love romance reads, but I also love to really read self-help and things that are helping me learn and grow. Lots of variety within the fiction space, but I'm right in front of all my poetry books right now too. So I'm kind of all over the place. There's not much I won't read.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think I have a friend actually who loves to read cookbooks. Like that's their
Ooh,
genre of choice, which I never thought about. I was like, oh, I
yeah,
definitely use them as a reference, but they read every story in the
that's
cookbook,
so
which
cool.
is kind of like a biography in a lot of ways. And you talked about this a little bit at the start, but what inspired you to start All the Rad Reads?
Yeah, as I started reading more after college, I found that I wanted to talk about the books that I was reading. There was something really special to me about not just reading for myself, but then getting to share that with other people. And I had several friends that were reading. And like I talked about, I've connected with some of my best friends online, but we're all really spread out. And so I wanted a space beyond just like my reading apps, which I use and love, to talk about books and connect with other people who liked those books too. And I felt like I'm just kind of having, studied media arts and design and journalism and social media, always working in social media spaces. It felt like I don't want to overwhelm like my personal Instagram with all of my book stuff. I'll put that somewhere else. And I really didn't think anybody would care or like that it would become a thing. And then it did. And it was like, oh, wait, okay, this could actually be a space where we really have great conversations about books, where I can share recommendations, where I can, create little roundups around different things that I'm interested in kind of highlighting. And it kind of it became something. I was intentional about it, but also surprised by it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that anytime you start a new venture, you sometimes just put something out into the world,
Mhm.
particularly as creative, because it needs to come out. Like you've got to give birth to it or you have to, like let it fly. And then when it takes off, it has to just feel so wonderful, inspiring, particularly this niche community of like book talk and
Yeah.
bookstagram. And, I think it's a place for people to be thoughtful about the kind of content they're consuming, which is I'd like to ask you about diversifying our reading. What does that mean to you? And what has that journey looked like for you as someone who has admittedly kind of gone up and down in genre or a little bit over here, a little bit over there? How have you been really intentional about diversifying your reading selections and how have you inspired others to do the same?
Yeah, I realized maybe gosh, like close to 10 years ago now that especially when it came to books in my faith life, I've grown up in the church. I realized I was only really consuming books by white American men. And it kind of started to be a thing for me where I realized, oh, that's fine, but who am I not hearing from? Who am I not listening to? What other voices might be part of this conversation? And that kind of coincided with different conferences and events I was attending in my life. And I realized there were so many other people talking about really cool things, creating incredible work, writing these amazing books. And I hadn't really incorporated those into kind of my inputs. And I realized the value of that. It was so much cooler to me to see the world through all of these different perspectives that were not just like my own. I had that kind of covered and I started to want to read more books from all different kinds of people of color and from different countries and from different genders and sexualities and all of these different perspectives that helped me kind of expand my worldview and have greater empathy and understanding. So I kind of created some challenges for myself to read, a greater percentage of my books in a year by women and people of color. And over time, that's kind of evolved to noticing more of my trends and really wanting to focus on incorporating as many different perspectives as I can, knowing that it's always going to be a work in progress. There are trends kind of in the world at large and in publishing that are kind of skewed toward a certain, majority type of author and book. And it takes a lot of work to kind of find, when you're looking at the table at the bookstore or whatever, to find the books that are written by marginalized authors. But it matters to me to support the kinds of voices and perspectives that I really want to see more of in the world. I've seen kind of firsthand how I feel when I see myself reflected in a book and how powerful that is to feel like I'm not alone in this and somebody else gets it. And to be able to want that for more and more people really matters to me. So I share a lot of diverse recommendations and also share my journey and kind of finding those and looking for that and what that looks like and how it's helped me grow and learn. And I'm kind of wanting to like lead by example a little bit, but also really encourage others that it's possible and it's really fun, and how I found like so many more incredible books and also been changed so much as a person because I've been more thoughtful about what I'm consuming.
Can you share a specific book
Mm.
that did just that, that sort of changed your perspective or opened your point of view on something that you hadn't considered previously? What was that like? What was the book?
Yeah, there's a book called This Is How It Always Is by Lori Frankel, and it's a fiction book about a mom whose child is transgender. And I read it a while back, and it was the first time I had really kind of put myself in the shoes and in the life of somebody who was trans. And that was not something that I had encountered in my personal life. And at the time, being in college, I was kind of, insulated and hadn't really encountered anybody who, felt differently about their gender than what they were assigned at birth. And to read this story and feel so I just felt so moved by it. I think that's the power of stories and of writing is that you just, you can encounter and connect with different types of people with different backgrounds in a way that it just felt so real and human and was just like, oh my gosh, how can I not be like so supportive and so for people who, are transgender? And that just kind of, it blew my world open and helped me realize that there were so many other pockets of kinds of people that I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I value really highly in my life, staying open and being curious and letting myself grow and evolve and change over time. And that was a book that really did that for me and made me care a lot more deeply about looking to the margins to make sure I was listening and growing and trying to understand better and try to learn how to be a better ally. And books have really helped me do that.
You just said a word that I think for me is like synonymous with reading and books, and that's curious.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think fostering curiosity is books are one of the easiest tools in the kit to do that, right? Because you can have conversations. I'm a parent and we use a lot of books to
Yeah.
have at least start hard conversations with our kids or conversations that could feel tricky or that they might feel uncomfortable having with us. We can read a storybook about it and then all of a sudden it's a lot different. Why do you think books and literacy are so important for our communities? And how can we, as readers, as individuals in this community, take action to help promote literacy?
I think, like we were just talking about, it's such a way to get outside of your own lived experience, your own bubble. I think even, the best, most intentional, thoughtful among us still have gaps in our lives where we aren't exposed to every kind of person from every background, from every nationality, race, gender, whatever it is. And books, like we've talked about, are such a doorway and a pathway into just awareness and understanding and empathy. I read some things that I, find I don't agree with, but I appreciate the work of reading something and examining my own thoughts, my own beliefs, my own stances. I think in the political climate, in different, if you're in a faith space, if you're a parent, if whatever kind of interest you have, exposing yourself to different perspectives can help you either grow and learn and evolve and change, or really find like, no, I really do love this thing about myself. And this helps me have a deeper knowledge of something, or even just something random and interesting. Like sharks are my favorite animal. And the more, I've read books about sharks and been like, yeah, I really do love this animal. Like how cool that I now know more about them and, can be a bigger fangirl for sharks. Like that's just a silly example, but like,
Watch out, Discovery Channel, watch out.
I know. Shark Week's my favorite. But it's true in so many pockets, right? That I just didn't, you don't know what you don't know. And your lived experience can only be but so robust. And books are just, for every book that I've read, right, I've been introduced to something new. And that's just helped me learn and grow and evolve, be a better neighbor, be a better friend, a better daughter, a better just person in my job. It just really helped me to grow and evolve. And I think that's the value of literacy. I think having exposure to books and access to books, libraries are one of my favorite things in the world because it's such an incredible resource for not just even books and reading, but beyond that. I love taking books to little free libraries in my neighborhood and just making sure that really good books are accessible to even just a person casually strolling by. I think without that, we just kind of limit ourselves and kind of close our worlds in. And that just is a bummer to me. There's so much out there to explore. And I want to make sure that's possible for as many people as there can be.
That's amazing. I know that giving back to your community is really important to you. And so you've just mentioned a couple ways that you do that, whether it's, when you're going out for a walk, taking an extra book that you're going to leave in a little free library. We got to see you in action at a volunteer activation. But what are some ways that book lovers whose bookshelves don't look as beautifully curated as yours, where they're sort of overflowing, what are some ways that book lovers can be thoughtful about giving back to their community or showing up for their community via books, via literacy, any of these pathways?
Yeah, I think there are several that come to mind. I recently started volunteering at the local children's museum. They have a book bank, and all of the books that we were kind of sorting through when I was volunteering with them were donations, whether from different organizations and companies or from individual people. So I think, whether you have 15 books at home or 50 or 5,000 or whatever, being thoughtful about, when you're ready to be done with the book, maybe where you can pass that on that could help put it in the hands of somebody else. And as the Children's Museum was explaining, they have some certain levels of quality that they will give in their book bank. But then even the books that don't pass, that threshold can be used in other capacities. They get shared with the United Way. They get shared with children in hospitals. They get shared with put in little free libraries. And it was really cool to see kind of the trickle down effect of how a book really can have so many different lives. I often support my local friends of the library. There's ways that I'm financially supporting my library, and also, taking books to their book sales, buying books at their book sales helps support them. I support my local indie bookstores. I think that's a great way to continue to support literacy in my community. And oftentimes those bookstores have ways that they're donating books as well. And it's usually a pretty easy thing for me to just, pick up an extra book every now and then and pass it on to somebody who I think could benefit from it. Or like I said, just like tuck it in a little free library, or, give it to a kiddo in my life. Over time, I think a lot of those little things start to add up and really create ripple effects where there's just more and more access. There's so many groups around, even my city of Richmond, that are doing work around literacy. And I've just been more intentional about looking for those, doing some research and figuring out who's doing what around me and how can I be part of that? How can I help? Can I give time? Can I give money? Can I give books? Can I give sharing on social media is just increased exposure, all these different ways that I can be supporting that, and also sharing with other people to encourage more of that.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I got to do that. I'm going to do this. Okay, we're going to do that.
And I think in general, like starting with one of those things, right? You don't have to not everybody has to do all of those things.
Yeah.
If it's just, once a year when you're doing a clean out of your house and you find you've got a couple books, like take that as your opportunity to take them to the local library and donate, and that can be your thing, and you can build over time. You don't have to do it all the time.
Spring cleaning is upon us, right? It's March. Yeah. Like, here we go. We're going to be all checking off our list of things to declutter our spaces. Well, I have a question for you. Okay. As people who are very busy, you have a full-time job, you have this other full-time job that you have curated and created for yourself. You're making time with me this morning, which I'm very grateful for. But I hear folks sometimes say, like, I don't understand how you have time to read. Like, when are you reading these books? Yeah. What are your kind of talking points, or how do you guide someone who wants to read more but really feels like they just don't have the space?
I think for me, it's about finding pockets where you can. I think we all use our time differently. Like you mentioned, we all have different kind of constraints or uses of our time throughout our day, but maybe you're driving your kids to school in the morning and you can pop on an audiobook that's kid friendly or family friendly or whatever it is, but that's a place that you could listen to books. Or you're going for a walk, you're on the treadmill at the gym. Audiobooks have been a way for me that I've found a way that I can kind of add those into things I'm already doing. It makes a Saturday of laundry and dishes and all of that a lot more fun if I've got a book in my ears. So that's one thing, is just kind of looking for those gaps. And I find that, I'll speed up my audiobook a little bit, but then over the course of a week commuting to and from work, I've read a whole extra book that I might have listened to music or kind of just zoned out. And that's been a fun way for me to incorporate books. I really value like taking my lunch break at work. That's something that I use for reading. I'll often just go outside and sit somewhere and just read for even 20 minutes and find that it's a really grounding kind of self-care practice for me and helps me do better at my work the rest of the afternoon because I've kind of taken that time. I find that if I keep a book on me and keep my Kindle in my purse, and I have that Kindle app on my phone, or keep a book in my car, there are so many pockets where I'll find myself, waiting at the car place to get my oil changed, and I can read a chapter. Just kind of finding those moments. And the more you do those types of things, I think you sort of build that muscle and you find yourself hungry to read the next chapter or get back to the book that you were reading. But it starts small and I think it builds over time. I've kind of made a little rhythm for myself where I read before I go to bed, and I will try to pick up a book when I'm eating a meal as opposed to putting a show on, and just kind of finding the spaces where I can make little shifts that start to add up. And setting goals for myself really helps. So knowing that I'm being thoughtful and intentional about that, I always stack up my books on my bookshelf counter right behind the camera here, that as I read throughout the month, and it motivates me to want to see that stack grow.
Smart.
And it just is
Right.
something that I kind of keep in front of my mind because you make time for what you care about. And I think if reading is something that you want to be caring more about, you got to find those pockets where you can fit it in. And I think you'll find they grow over time.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely a muscle. And like you said, I am kind of a newcomer to audiobooks, but I
Yeah.
find that like once I get hooked, I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, I'll fold the laundry. It's totally fine. Or like,
Right.
I'll do the carpool today because I'm like, I really
Yep.
want to listen to like two more chapters of my book.
Mhm.
And so sometimes we'll have a competition. My friends and I are like, well, how long was your Audible this month? Like,
Yep.
what are you listening to? Um,
Yeah.
but you're right, it's like a whole other book. And so then I do sometimes find if I have too many books happening at
Yeah.
the same time, my brain can't compute.
Hmm.
I'm listening to this one, I'm reading this one. This one I just got from the library and it's a digital loan and I have to read it in like 2 weeks, all of those pieces. But yeah, I think it's habit building, right? And I'm the same. I find that it really restores me in a lot of ways. So same there on that vibe.
I love it.
Well, we are so excited about this new endeavor that we're embarking on together.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about for the Beyond Our Shelves challenge?
Yeah, building this was one of just like the most exciting things I've done in a while. I've done a lot of these like parts of what has become this challenge have been part of my life for a while, and it was so fun to put it all together and each month kind of marry this something that I would love for us to all read and a kind of book for us to find and seek out and do together. And then also some kind of an action that connects us into our community. I think reading can be a solo activity, and that's awesome and really valuable. And it's also really fun if we're all seeking to read, a book by a marginalized author this month, and we're sharing our book recommendations. And, ooh, you talked about that book, and that sounds really cool. I want to add that to my list now. And now we're sharing this together and we're feeling connected in it. And then to have something that can take us into our community and connect us. Maybe it's going to my local library and looking for something I haven't done there before. There are 3D printers at my local library that are available to be used, and I've never done that. And I'm so excited that one of the challenges is to try a new service at my library and kind of push myself to just like go ask how to do it. It's not going to be that scary, I'm sure of it, but I just haven't done it yet. So I think it's going to be a really cool way to kind of stretch ourselves to try new things. That's some of the ways that I really found in my kind of early days of wanting to read more diversely. It helped me to have little prompts and little challenges and to know that other people were doing those things too. It helped me feel like encouraged in it and inspired and more motivated. And I liked the accountability of it all. And I liked just exploring and discovering new things that I didn't know existed because other people helped show them to me. So I think this is going to be a really cool way for us to do that from wherever we are and really find, I think, some new things in the process that we enjoy.
I could not agree more. My 10-year-old neighbors just took the 3D printing class at the library. And
Ooh.
so they are very excited. They're like, what do you need us to make you? Like, I don't know, but I will think of something. I will come up with a project and I'm really
Yeah.
excited to see what you create. And one of my daughter's friends 3D printed his Valentines for the class at the library.
Whoa.
So she has like a little dragon upstairs. I was like, what is this? So yeah,
Cool.
I think the resources available. I'm really excited to dive into the challenge as well and to find new ways to connect with community near and far through our love or like of books.
Yeah.
Because I think even if you don't identify as a reader or you say, like, I don't have time, like, I haven't picked up a book in years, everybody has a core memory, a book that a grown up read to them, a teacher, a parent. They saw it on a bookshelf, they saw it at the book fair as a child. And so, my question to you is, what's your favorite book of all time
The hardest question.
and why?
Exactly what you're saying. The core memory thing is why this book is my favorite. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I'm even just like I have like a book vase that's like the Little Women cover
I love
here
that.
on the shelf. I read that book pretty early on. I was a big like American Girl book kid and all those types of things. And I somehow got my hands on Little Women and I found I identified so much with Jo March's character, her kind of independence, and she had this like feisty side, and she kind of rebelled against society a little bit and wanted to do her own thing. And she was a writer, and she had these like this deep love for her friends and her family and all these things where I just was like, oh my gosh, like I love her. That feels like me. Like I want to be like her one day. And that's just a book that I've reread it at different stages of my life and found that I resonate with it in new ways. And I really wish the ending was different. Like I don't think she should have ended up with who she ended up with. But I like that. I like that it's a book that has kind of stuck with me. It's grown with me. It's a classic for a reason. I collect different copies of it now. I've loved watching the movie adaptations of it. But it was one for me as a kid where I saw myself reflected, and it was like, that changed my life.
Amazing. And I love that base. I have seen them. And so in line with that, do you judge books by their covers? Be
oh my
honest.
gosh, yes. Yes. I think partially it's also because I studied graphic design in college and
Oh,
journalism.
well,
So there's a part of me that's just like, if I see a beautiful, I'm like looking around me, like, what's a good example of a beautiful cover? But it just,
have
yeah,
fun.
they catch your eye. And
Yeah.
I think it matters how a book looks. There are some books, there's one called The Art or The War of Art, The Art of War. I can't remember exactly now, but it's a horrible cover. And somebody made me read it. They were like, this is really, really good. Like, ignore the cover and read the book anyway. And I did. And I'm so glad I did. I really wish that it had a better cover, but I do, of course. I mean, I think publishing has come a long way to really know that a cover will attract different kinds of readers and make that stand out. But they've gotten really, they're fun. Book covers are fun. I love looking at like the trends in design and stuff. And yeah.
And I think the spine is so important now too, as we all style
Yeah.
everything, right? Like the front jacket is one thing, but you have like a nice spine that will look good in a different stack on
I
your
like the
shelves.
straight edge trends. Like books are getting just like fancier and fancier over time. I feel like I have some near me that are just like special editions are getting cooler. And I'm like, man, we're doing the most. Like this is art. We are holding art.
Truly. Well, and as you were saying, like books are a doorway. There's just something about the visual, right? Like you open a book, you open a door. Like there is really so much intention, I think, in that, and thinking about them as portals and gateways to new worlds, new perspectives, to just let yourself get lost for a little while in a story. You know, we pick up obviously dozens of children's books, and sometimes I'm just blown away, right, by the imagery in them and the illustration. And I'm like, man, I wish more of my books had illustrations in them, because it really is just so stunning. And even if I find the storyline is maybe not my favorite, sometimes you're really drawn to the portraits kind of inside of them. And so I think that's really powerful.
I have a cart of all children's books because I collect those as well. And amazing. I thought of that earlier when we were talking about this challenge and just the different ways I think people can connect into it. For people who aren't readers but maybe have kids in their life, I'm not a parent, but I'm an aunt, a kind of a pseudo aunt to some kiddos in my life. And how fun to bring books to them to read for bedtime stories that are a little bit more diverse, or help them, explore different types of lifestyles or characters or emotions or places in the world or animals or whatever it is. So even if it's not, you don't have to necessarily take the Beyond Our Shelves challenge to mean, physical books for yourself as a grown up. You could really take it as a challenge to read, that kind of book to your kid every month. And I think that'd be a fun way to make it work for you too.
For sure. I mean, I remember going to the library and like always wanting those Nat Geo books, right? With all the pictures of the animals in real life. And my kindergartner is now reading a book from the library like that. But it is actually the travel journalist like went and spent time in all of these different places to research these animals. And so she's got a million questions about orcas. And I'm like, I don't know, let's read these 6 pages and we'll see what we learn.
Yeah.
But it is really fun. And we have a couple minutes left. Are you ready for some hot takes?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Let's chat book hot takes. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Hardcover or softcover?
I think hardcover because they stay open better, and then I can like eat or knit or do something else while I'm reading too.
You're knitting and reading at the same time?
I'm just loom knitting. It's my first attempt at like fiber arts, and I've gotten very into it. But yeah, it's pretty mindless, so you can like do something else with your eyes.
That's amazing. Now, I would say the same, but like soft cover at the beach, because you got a lot of stuff that you're hauling. So I'm a paperback beach girl.
There you go.
Paper books or e-reader?
I'm a paper book kind of person. I think I like, especially because I like to stack them up when I finish reading them, and I like to hold them. I like to take pictures of them. It's just a lot more like aesthetic to have a pretty book.
For sure it is.
I have an e-reader. I love using it. I use it connected to my local library, and I find that it's nice to have that on me, especially when I'm traveling. But day to day, I'm going to pick a physical, like hardcover book.
Now, physical book or audiobook?
I'm mostly a physical book person. So if I had to pick one, that would be what I pick. I do love mixing in audio. Usually it's like 3-ish books of my month are audio, but then the other like 7 to plus 10 or whatever are physical. I like to hold it. I like to just have an experience with the book.
Sure. And for everybody, I would like to point out you just shared that you're reading 10 to 13 books a month. Is that math? I'm not really great at math, but I'm pretty sure that's what you've just shared with us.
I do usually read between like 150 and 200 a year.
Amazing.
I'm telling you, the more you read, the more you read. That's not been my life forever. And there are some privileges in my life of, not having a partner or kids and all that kind of stuff that help me have a little bit more free time to mix in some books. But yeah, I just have gotten really like serious about it. I think creating content around books helps because I need to read more so that I can talk about more. And it's kind of fueled my fire when it comes to reading. But yeah, I read a lot.
I'm like, okay, I should up my goal this year. I'm going to up my goal a little bit. Fiction or nonfiction? What do you gravitate towards?
These days, more fiction. I was actually looking at the trends. I'm a huge data nerd, so I have all these spreadsheets and things about my reading life that are like wild. But I used to be heavily nonfiction and just like a sprinkle of fiction. And over the years, that percentage has completely shifted. Now it's majority fiction and a little sprinkling of nonfiction. And I really just think that's to do with kind of the state of the world and what I'm doing in my work and feeling a little bit like I need to just read for fun and enjoyment and escape as opposed to really deep thinking all the time. But I'm wanting to be more intentional about kind of mixing those books in and being consistent about feeding that part of my reading life. But day to day, I'm in more fiction than
the same. I'm definitely more fiction, but I am finding myself drawn to fiction set in places or times that I don't know a lot about. And then it's prompting me to go on like a deep dive to learn more about a specific region or something like that. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's a pathway, right?
We can learn
prompting my curiosity. Yeah. But I'm the same. I'm like, I need a story that I can feel all the feelings, but then at the end of the day, be like, okay, it was a story.
Yeah. Right.
It was a story. Do you think people should always finish a book even if they don't like it?
No. I at one point I heard a calculation of like when you can kind of DNF or do not finish a book. It was something to do with like your age plus or minus something. I don't remember exactly, but I am a big believer. There are so many books out there. There are so many great books out there that if you're finding you're not vibing with a book, set it aside. Because I found for me, if I try to push through a book that I'm not really enjoying or not loving, it's going to kind of slow my momentum and really just kind of be a bummer. I will kind of, sometimes I'll be like, this just really isn't for me ever. And there's some that I'm like, I just don't think it's the right time for this book. I'll just shelve it and I'll come back to it later. And I think books find you when it's their time to find you. And you kind of can let them go if they're not working for you. And you can always get that book again. There's no harm in just kind of being like, you know what, not for now. I'll find something else that's exciting or interesting and then get back to it. But don't force yourself to finish a book you're not loving. Life's too short.
I was reading a book. Thank you for affirming that because I was reading this book by an author that I love. And it was like one of my favorite books I read last year. And I'm like, oh, I'll read another one of her books. And I just couldn't, like 4 chapters in, I'm like, this book is not for me. It's just, I don't know what's happening. So I appreciate being seen in that moment that, I think I did make it to chapter 10 and then I was like, okay, we're moving on to something else.
Let it go.
What is one overused book trope that you're just totally over?
Ooh, that is a good one. I don't know if you would call like miscommunication a trope, but I think it comes up a lot, especially in romance books, where I get so frustrated if it feels like we're overusing that, like they're just not going to talk about the thing that we're all aware is the problem. And they're just like drawing out the tension kind of feels like for the sake of it. I've just like done enough therapy in my life where I want to be like, sit down and have a hard conversation. Say what you need to say. So I think that I like when there's really good conversation and there's good depth and good banter and we're working through stuff. I think that gives so much more kind of meat to a book than this, like, they're just not going to talk about the thing, but it's going to continue to be an issue.
I think mine is sort of the formula, right? Like you start the book and you're like, okay, she's going home for this thing and the high school boyfriend is going to
Yeah.
magically appear next door and her fiance can't come. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've seen this movie
Right.
several times, once a year.
Yeah. I like when a book surprises me. It's such a
Me too.
fun, I think the way publishing works these days, authors are like churning these books out and they do start to
Yeah.
feel a little bit more formulaic in some ways. So when I find something that's new or surprising, it's like, yeah, that. I like that. Like that's where books are the best to me.
Yeah, agreed. I love a good twist in a
Yeah.
book.
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about annotating in your books?
Yes, mostly in my nonfiction, but I am very much the person that will put the little like bookish flags on the side of my book. I have these little like post-it note flags I use a lot. It kind of, there'll be a moment when it comes to reading a book that I'll kind of be like, no, this is going to be a book that I want to annotate. And I tend to put like a color coding system based on what each color will mean to me. And it's kind of unique for that book. So about a chapter or two, and I start to realize like, oh, I want to flag like things I'm loving or things that are challenging me or a new fact. And I want to give those different colors so I can reference back and kind of have a roadmap of what that book was like for me to read. I don't do it as much in fiction. Sometimes I'll flag like a beautiful quote or something that gave me all the feels. It's really easy to do on a Kindle too, to kind of highlight lines that stand out to me. But physical books, that kind of, it depends on what it is. If it feels like a book like I'm going to want to keep this one, I'll go ahead and interact with it. Sometimes I'll just put the sticky flag so I can take them off, but I won't write in it in case I'm not sure if I want to keep it. I just want to write the quotes down and then I can pass the book on. But yeah, I think I like to have a kind of experience with the book and have a record of it. It's fun to me.
So, in summary, based on your glossary of annotation, you're a big fan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
I
I
have
was
a
gonna,
way of doing it.
I love it. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna incorporate that in my practice as well, because I do enjoy when I'm reading on an ebook or something and it tells you that a passage is like very highlighted. Sometimes it makes me think, well, that actually didn't resonate with me,
Right.
but
Like, why did
it's
everybody like
resonated with 4,000 other readers. Like,
that? Uh-huh.
maybe I should go back and reread that again and see
Yeah.
if that settled for me. Or I see it coming and I'm like, I'm going to bite into that too. Like
Right.
that, I'm going to carry that with me
Mhm.
long after I've put this book down. So I find I'm doing it more in my e-reader and less
Yeah.
in my physical book. This question comes from our executive director. What are
Okay.
your thoughts on Wattpad?
That's fun. I was never super into Wattpad. I've heard about it more than I really like personally explored it. I have more recently discovered fan fiction as a genre, particularly within like the Dramione space of Draco and Hermione. So that has been something, those are usually found on Archive of Our Own, but I am brand new to that kind of space. And yeah, Wattpad, I don't know. I never really fully got into it or knew about it. I was pretty sheltered growing up and didn't have a ton of like access to a lot of things beyond just like the library. So yeah, it kind of skipped me by, but I'm finding my way into some of the kind of more crowdsourced or fan fiction world, and it's fun. There's a lot there
I
to explore.
feel, and maybe it's because my own reading really like exploded post COVID because there was only so much TV we could watch, only so much internet we could read. That I was like, I'm going to be reading a lot more. That there are all of these new sort of, well, maybe they're not new, but kind of burgeoning fields like the fan fiction and things like that. My niece is writing her own fan fiction story based on The Outsiders right now. Just a really great book. And so, yeah, and it's so fun now to kind of relive our childhood books, both my husband and I, with our girls, and say, like, you've got to read the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankenweiler and
Yeah.
watch their little brains. I'm like, I forgot about this book. It's so great. And so I think, the journey of reading is nonlinear, like so many things in life. And, you've given a lot of inspiration to me today, to keep reading and to be thoughtful about what I'm consuming and where I'm picking it up. And we're so grateful to know you, to call you our friend, to embark on this Beyond Our Shelves challenge together. Any parting words for our community as we launch the challenge with them?
Yeah, I am so excited about this. I really think there's so much out there for us to explore and connect with, and the ways that we can grow through reading and through engaging in these little fun challenges, I think is really meaningful. So I would encourage you to just start somewhere, start where you're at, take a step. And if it's, you look at the 6 months and you're like, "Whew, I can't do all of that, but I can try this one thing." That's awesome. I think so much of this is just an act of kind of putting things in front of us, giving us kind of this beautiful spread and letting people pick and choose what works for them and finding new ways to kind of push yourself outside of your bubble. To me, it's been the most like life-changing and rewarding thing I've ever done. And I want for more people to be able to experience just like how beautiful it is to encounter perspectives and stories that are different or like you, and you find yourself reflected or whatever it is. And I think there's just a lot of really good work being done in libraries and nonprofits and bookstores and all of the places. And I'm excited for people to kind of take some steps to explore those further and maybe find some new favorite spots or some new ways to serve, and maybe find a new friend on the internet who read a book that you loved too, and you get to talk about it in the comments. I think there's just a lot of good to be had, and I'm excited to connect with everyone who's diving in. It's going to be fun.
We are too. I am getting my punch card ready. I am circulating it with my community near and far. And thank you so much, Rachel. Everybody, this is at All the Rad Reads, new friend of 6 Degrees of KB. And we are grateful to you and to all of our community.
Thank you.